cure is Donald Trump and his MAGA Republican friends. It's time for Republicans in the Congress to show a little courage, to show a little spine, to make it clear to the American people that you work for them, not for anyone else. I know who I work for. I work for the American people. I'm almost like this. We have to remember who in God's name we are. We're the United States of America. You've heard me say it many times. There's nothing beyond our capacity if we do it together. We're right on the verge of doing it together. I hope and pray they find reason to reconsider blowing this up. May God bless you all. May God protect our troops. Folks, you're going to ask me questions. Hang on a second. I'm going to be back on Thursday. I don't want to prejudice what may be going on in negotiations now. So I'm not going to be answering any questions of this. I'll be back Thursday to stand here with you and answer all the questions you want about this issue. Thank you.
Can we ask what needs to get done for the hostage deal to get resolved, sir?
This indirectly has a lot to do with the hostage deal and what's going on in the Middle East. The decision on what we do relative to Israel, the decision what we do in terms of American funding, of whether we're going to engage with the situation in Ukraine. It all goes to the question of American power. It all goes to, does America keep its word? Does America move forward? There is some movement, and I'll maybe choose my words. There's some movement. There's been a response from there's been a response from the opposition, but yes, I'm sorry, from Hamas, but it seems to be a little over the top. We're not sure where it is. There's a continuing negotiation right now.
Mr. President, if this bill fails, would you consider supporting something separate that just addresses Israel or Ukraine?
I'm not going to concede that now. We need it all. The rest of the world's looking at us, and they really are.
Mr. President, trust this Congress?
Does not have immunity, Mr. President. Your reaction to that ruling?
All right, well, once again, you saw President Biden there urging Congress to pass that national security supplemental bill that would provide funding for Ukraine, Israel, and border security. Our Jay O'Brien joining me from Capitol Hill, along with our senior White House correspondent, Selena Wang, for more. So, Selena, let's just start with you and your takeaways from the president's remarks.
Yeah, Kira, that was one of President Biden's more forceful speeches, and he did not mince words. He very clearly said multiple times the only reason why this bill is going to die and the only reason why America's borders are not secure is because of Donald Trump. He blamed Donald Trump for wanting to use this as a political issue, weaponizing it, saying he wants to run against this issue instead of actually helping the American people. He used this speech also as an opportunity to blame and shame Republicans, asking them, who do you serve? Do you serve the American people or do you serve Donald Trump? And so really the president here, he's flipping the script. He's saying this might not succeed, but I'm going to tell you why. The president also used this, Kira, as an opportunity to lay out why he thinks the deal that the White House played months of the role in negotiating is good for the American people, walking through how it increased security at the border, how many people who are traditionally even conservative have backed this, and how it also is what he calls tough and humane. He did address some of the pushback that we've seen from progressives about how this doesn't address issues like asylum and a pathway to citizenship. And the president there is saying this doesn't get me everything I want. And the third message that the president was conveying here was the element of Ukraine, how this is an urgent issue, how Ukraine is in dire straits. And we've heard the president reiterate this before, that failing to aid Ukraine, that would be a gift to Putin. That would be exactly playing into Vladimir Putin's hands. But really what struck me, Kira, was the number of times that the president called out Donald Trump. We're going to continue to hear the president make that message over and over again from here until November, that Donald Trump is the reason why this didn't get done.
So, Jay, is it Donald Trump? Or is it these Senate Republicans that are pushing back, saying, no, the problem is that you're not clamping down on these illegal border crossings, and we need more? The president says, you're just playing games. Senate Republicans that are pushing back said, no, we're not. We want more.
Yeah, and the answer is yes. I mean, it's all of these factors playing in here at once. Certainly, the most pressure exerted early on was from Donald Trump. Remember, for weeks now, Donald Trump has been out on the campaign trail and posting on social media, urging congressional Republicans not to back this deal, because as the president noted in his remarks, he's been very plain about saying that this is an issue he wants to run on in 2024. So this momentum of trying to kill this bill, certainly in large part, began with former President Trump. Even Speaker Mike Johnson, who is an opponent of this deal, said early on he was having conversations with former President Trump about this. And then, of course, after the text of the bill is released on Sunday night, not even like a half hour after it's out, we saw Republicans, this 370-piece page of legislation, say that they weren't going to support this.
All right, Jay, Selena, thank you so much. We have breaking news now we want to get to. The jury has reached a verdict in the Jennifer Crumbley trial. Crumbley is charged with involuntary manslaughter after her son shot and killed 4 students at his high school back in 2021. Prosecutors say that Crumbley is the one that granted her son access to that gun that he used to shoot his fellow students, and that she also failed to get her son support for his mental health issues. Crumbley is the first parent, as you know, in the U.S. ever to be charged in a school shooting that was committed by their child. Her husband is also going to face trial next month for the same crime. Are these live pictures, by the way, that we have now? Okay, so Jennifer Crumbley just came into the courtroom. These are live pictures as she's about to find out the verdict that the jury has and is getting ready to present. Joining us now from Pontiac, Michigan, are Trevor Alt, also with us, ABC News legal contributor Brian Buckmeyer. He joins us now. Trevor, let's start with you. Any inside details? What do you know as we just wait to hear from the judge?
Well, it's pretty clear, Kira, that this was not an easy or immediate decision from this jury. So they've reached this verdict now after more than 11 hours of deliberation. They were handed the case yesterday at 10 a.m., worked all the way through the day yesterday, went home at 5. This morning they came back at 9. They didn't even meet in the courtroom. The judge never came in. The jury went right to work, and they worked through lunch up until this verdict, which just about 15 minutes ago we were told that it was in. So any moment this verdict is going to be read. The fact that this took 11 hours, that the jury had a couple questions yesterday, they wanted some clarification on what needed to be proven, what they could consider in order to find her guilty, and also what they could infer from the fact that the shooter, Jennifer Crumbley's son, did not testify in this case, means they wanted some finer details. And then clearly there had to have been some back and forth. But at this point, this verdict could go either way. The fact, though, is the verdict is in. And we are about to find out Jennifer Crumbley's fate in what could be a historic ruling for the United States, Kira.
Yes, indeed. Trevor, thank you. Brian, what do you think?
Yeah, it's really reading tea leaves. You're looking at the previous comments by the jury and trying to guess which way another. I agree with Trevor. This could go either way, but I think that whichever way it does go, it will create a precedence in this country and also affect the next case of James Crumbley as well.
So let's get your thoughts on what we've heard up to this point with regard to evidence, also Jennifer Crumbley taking the stand in her own defense, lawyers from both sides, as we wait to hear what this verdict is. Your thoughts as an attorney, do you think one side did better than another? What's your gut telling you here?
My gut is telling me that the jury, maybe in large part, ignored both sides. When I hear a jury asks for the elements of the crime and then whether or not they can infer other evidence, it suggests that the evidence presented to them might not have been sufficient for them to make their decision. I see here the jury's coming in, though that's why everyone's stepping in. But ultimately, I think it's going to be a push and pull between those members of the jurors to really decide what is bad parenting and does it reach a level of criminality in this case.
Did you think what we witnessed, and that was, if you reading so many of the different op-eds from various legal analysts, the conclusion from what I read from experts just in the legal field was that this was going to be a tough one to prove for manslaughter, that yes, indeed, didn't do a great job parenting. She nor her husband, James, who will face trial after she does here, and we get a verdict. But that's pretty hard. You can't really use bad parenting for manslaughter?
Well, at least by the prosecution's theory, the answer is yes.
All right, Brian, stay with me. We're going to find out the verdict right now. Our David Muir is in the chair.
This is an ABC News special report. Now reporting, David Muir.
Good afternoon. We're coming on the air at this hour because a jury has reached a verdict in the unprecedented trial of a mother charged in connection with her son's deadly high school shooting in Oxford, Michigan. You're looking at live pictures right now. This is the first of its kind case in the country. Jennifer Crumbley facing 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter after her son Ethan Crumbley opened fire at his high school in 2021, killing 4 classmates using the gun his parents had bought for him. They have just asked the courtroom to rise. The judge, Cheryl Matthews, back in the court, the jury entering that courtroom, about to deliver their verdict. Ethan Crumbley was 15 years old at the time of the shooting. Both Jennifer Crumbley and her husband are accused of ignoring what the prosecution calls obvious warning signs that their son needed help. Now, the husband, the father, will be tried separately. Let's listen to the court.
Are you the correct person?
I am.
Could you please read your verdict?
Individually?
Sure.
Okay. On count 1 of involuntary manslaughter as to Madison Baldwin, we find the defendant guilty of involuntary manslaughter. On count 2 of involuntary manslaughter in regards to Tate Muir, we find the defendant guilty of involuntary manslaughter. On count 3 as to involuntary manslaughter regarding Hannah St. Juliana, we find the defendant guilty of involuntary manslaughter. And in count 4 of involuntary manslaughter against Justin Schilling, we find the defendant guilty of involuntary manslaughter.
Thank you, woman. You can be seated. And I'm going to listen to
An historic moment in this country amid the school shootings we have witnessed as a country. Again, this is the first case in which a parent has been charged and tried in connection with their child's deadly school shooting. You've just heard Jennifer Crumbley found guilty on 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter, 1 count for each of the students killed in that shooting. The judge instructing everyone in the court to remain seated. Let's listen back in.
Jury in seat number 11, was that and is that your verdict?
Yes.
Jury in seat number 12, was that and is that your verdict?
Yes.
Jury in seat number 13, was that and is that your verdict?
Yes.
Jury in seat number 14, was that and is that your verdict?
Yes.
Jury in seat number 16, was that and is that your verdict?
Yes. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We all know that this is one of the hardest things you've ever done. I'm going to ask you to return to the jury room. The 2 remaining alternates are also going to join you, and I'll be with you in a few minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All rise for the jury.
You can hear the judge there speaking with the jury, saying this is one of the most difficult things you will ever do. The jury now leaving that courtroom. That was the polling of the jury, if you will, making sure that each one of them agreed with the verdict that had been read. Again, Jennifer Crumbley, the mother, charged 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter in that courtroom. Let's listen to the judge.
That should be fine, Judge. Thank you.
April 9th at 9 o'clock is fine. Thank you.
All right. I'm going to ask everyone to remain seated while the defendant is taken out of the courtroom. Right?
All rise. You may be seated.
You can see Jennifer Crumbley cuffed, being led from that courtroom after being found guilty in connection with the school shooting in Michigan. Crumbley had taken the stand in her own defense, visibly nervous at times, breaking out in hives on the stand, telling the jury that her son showed no signs of mental illness. She and her husband were accused of ignoring the warning signs. She told jurors, quote, "I wish he would have killed us instead." Prosecutors during this trial had pointed to Ethan Crumbley's journal, where he wrote that, quote, "My parents don't listen to me, and I have zero help for my mental problems, and it's causing me to shoot up the school." Of course, the jury, in deliberating, they asked the judge first two questions, one had centered on the burden of proof needed to convict in this case. The second question, both of these questions coming yesterday, the second one about what they can infer after the shooter, the son, did not take the stand during this trial. As we know, the husband will be tried separately weeks from now. The wife found guilty on 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter. I want to bring in Trevor Ault, who's been reporting on this case. He's live in Michigan. Trevor, where do we go from here?
Well, now we're going to head to the sentencing portion for Jennifer Crumbley, David, and she could be looking at many years here, maximum of 15 years in prison for each of these 4 counts, totaling up to potentially 60 years in prison, as now this second trial for her husband, James Crumbley, is looming. And now that they've had this guilty verdict, that's certainly possibly not going to bode well for him once he gets to the trial. But I can tell you this, David, this was not a verdict that this jury reached lightly. This took more than 11 hours of deliberation. They worked all through the day yesterday after failing to reach a verdict, came back at 9, began deliberating right away once again, worked all the way through lunch before coming to this conclusion. And now we aren't going to get any immediate clarity as to what swayed them, because they remain under gag order with that second trial for James Crumbley waiting in the balance to begin next month. Certainly, though, those key moments were from Jennifer Crumbley on the stand. While she denied that culpability, said she did everything she could, she still said, looking back, she wouldn't do anything differently. And that is in the face of a number of red flags that the prosecution laid out. The buying the weapon for their son, which he used in the shooting, laughing off when he was caught the day before shooting, looking up ammunition in class. Jennifer Crumbley texted him, "LOL, I'm not mad at you. You have to learn not to get caught." And of course, the morning of the shooting, when both parents were called in because their son had been caught with a disturbing drawing on his math homework that had that gun. It had a person shot. He wrote "blood everywhere" and "the thoughts won't stop, help me." But the parents declined to take him home. They left. When Jennifer Crumbley testified, she did not have to return to work. And less than 2 hours later, that shooting happened and their son killed 4 of his classmates. And now this jury has determined that Jennifer Crumbley is responsible for those 4 students' deaths, Dave.
Stay with us here, Trevor. Another question for you. In the meantime, Trevor points out an extraordinary part of this case, which was the parents had been brought to the school over concerns over their son, actually met at the school, were showed some of those concerns, some of the writings from their son. You heard Trevor allude to that. They then left the school and allowed their son to stay at school, and it was just within a matter of hours that he pulled the gun from that bag. They didn't mention that they had bought their son a gun, or perhaps that the locker or the bag or any of his belongings should be checked. And of course, we know the deadly school shooting then playing out just a couple of hours after that meeting with the parents. Trevor, I wanted to ask you about the jury too, because this was also interesting. Several of these jurors, parents, also gun owners in that jury. And as you pointed out, they did not take these deliberations lightly.
No, absolutely not, David. And it was very clear during the jury selection process. I mean, we're in an area of Michigan. This is in Pontiac. We're about 45 minutes north of Detroit or so. This is an area where there is a pretty heavy gun culture. It is part of a lot of people's lives, and that's the case for a lot of members of the jury. A lot of these people have grown up around weapons. A lot of them have weapons themselves. A lot of them, their parents had weapons, but they would frequently lock them up. And that was clearly key here, not necessarily the fact that the Crumbleys had weapons themselves, or that even that they had bought a weapon to take their teenage son to use at the shooting range. But gun safety is a key issue, and it will be a key issue in James Crumbley's trial too. An investigator testified on the stand in this trial, David, that not only did they fail to secure the weapon that the shooter then took to school and used to kill his other classmates, but in the wake of the shooting, when investigators showed up at the Crumbleys' household, they found 2 other weapons inside the house in a gun safe, but the code to the safe was 000. And you could hear the investigator when relaying that information. It pretty heavily implies that this family did not take gun safety to the degree that they needed to, with a 15-year-old in their house, and a 15-year-old who they likely should have been aware had deteriorating signs of his mental health here. So the fact that they've been able to reach this conclusion, David, that Jennifer Crumbley is guilty, it means the prosecution satisfied one of 2 possibilities. One is the fact that they failed to secure that gun is enough to find her responsible for those murders, or also, under Michigan law, that she failed to provide what's known as ordinary care by not detecting those signs that her son's mental health was failing, not getting him the help that he needed, and thus she is responsible for the fact that he went and killed his classmates.
Trevor Ault, who's been covering this case for us. Trevor, thank you for laying that out for us. Again, you're watching live coverage. This is a historic moment because we have never seen a case like this before. A parent held accountable in their child's deadly school shooting rampage. In this case, Jennifer Crumbley, the first parent ever to be tried. The husband will be tried next and separately. She has been found guilty just moments ago. 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter, 4 counts for each of the children who lost their lives that day. One more question before we go, and this goes to our legal contributor, Brian Buckmeyer. And Brian, just the historic nature of this case, and as Trevor points out there, that it wasn't necessarily the gun itself, but the safety or lack thereof when it came to handling weapons in the home, and also the many warning signs that the prosecution laid out for that jury, saying they were ignored by these parents.
Yes, David, it was both of those. So what we're looking at here is the jury ultimately decided that the prosecution did prove their case, that the multiple red flags that were presented to Jennifer Crumbley and the fact that she had provided the gun, even though the husband had purchased it, but she was the last one to go shooting with the shooter, and that it was in an unsecure location that he was able to kill others, created that foreseeability and the causation that under Michigan law, Jennifer Crumbley should have known better. But it's historic in the sense that it's on the path to precedence. I think for the defense, I would ultimately assume that they're going to appeal this case. And in Michigan, you have a right to the Court of Appeals, and then potentially this could go all the way to the Supreme Court of Michigan, and maybe even further. We'll have to watch this case as it continues.
So likely an appeal coming. In the meantime, though, you hint at the precedent, the nature of this case, the historic nature of the case, and moving forward. We know what we're dealing with as a country when it comes to deadly school shootings. And now as we move forward, there will be increased scrutiny on the parents of student shooters. And I hate to say that there'll be other shootings, but we know what we have witnessed here as a country, and the parents' responsibility to look for warning signs and to make sure that weapons are locked up and protected inside the home.
Absolutely. Cases are a number of issues. They affect both the person who commits the crime, but also the society as a whole. And I think as parents going forward, where they're going to start looking, or we're going to start looking at what our children are saying to us, what they're doing, checking for these red flags. But not only in that, in conjunction, making sure they do not have the weapons to commit these mass shootings that we've seen so often in this country. In the legal world, we call this a bright line rule, that if we are similar to that of the defendant, where these red flags pop up, the school announces those red flags. We see them and we are aware of them, but we're also aware of the danger that may be present from access to a weapon, or our lack of protection or ordinary care that garners or gives that person access to that weapon. We now understand what the bright line rule is as to criminality and potential liability in the face of a mass shooting.
Brian Buckmeyer, our ABC News legal contributor. Brian, our thanks to you and to Trevor Ault in Michigan. Again, the breaking news at this hour: Jennifer Crumbley, the mother, found guilty 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter in connection with that deadly school shooting in Oxford, Michigan. Her husband will be tried in the weeks to come. An appeal in this case, of course, also likely. Our coverage will continue. ABC News Live, abcnews.com, and I'll be back with the entire team a little later today for World News Tonight. I'm David Muir in New York. I'll see you then. Good day.
This has been a special report from ABC News.
And our thanks to David. I'm Kira Phillips. We are going to continue our breaking news coverage now. It's a historic verdict. Jennifer Crumbley found guilty on 4 counts of manslaughter after giving her son the gun that he used to carry out that mass shooting at his high school in Michigan. Oxford High School was the high school. 4 classmates were killed. Our legal contributor, Brian Buckmeyer, and also our Trevor Ault, who's outside that court in Pontiac, Michigan, join me now. Brian, well, first, Trevor, since we have you, you were there for the moment that it happened. You know, there was so much talk about the fact that there could be a hung jury, or that Jennifer Crumbley would be basically left off the hook because of how the jury was made up. And this went quite the opposite way. Astounding to hear the verdict. Guilty on all 4 counts. She now faces up to 15 years for each one of those counts. This is, but how mass shootings, when they happen, how parents could now be held accountable.
Yeah, Kira, and It's definitely something that the jury did not reach lightly. This took more than 11 hours of deliberation. And as you point out, the longer this went on, the more you started to wonder whether this conviction was not going to happen. The jury took all day yesterday, had those 2 questions, couldn't reach a verdict at 5, came back right at 9 today, didn't even meet with the judge in the morning, went right back to deliberations and worked all the way through lunch. And now we have this historic verdict. And we are hearing from inside the courtroom, Kira. I just would like to share, because as this trial played out, I was inside for a lot of it. The family members of the victims in this shooting, many of them were inside court every single day, listening to every witness, listening to every piece of evidence, listening to all the testimony and the arguments. And now, as this verdict is read, we know that one of them, the father of Justin Schillown, a number of women started crying. And afterwards, those families came up, shook the hands of the prosecution and said, thank you, thank you, thank you. This is clearly overwhelming for them. And it's a verdict that we've never seen before in this country, as you point out. I do want to speak to the idea, though, of the precedent here, because it does seem, this is maybe a watershed moment, holding the parents accountable. Going back to December of 2021, when these charges were first filed in the days immediately after the shooting, I asked the prosecutor, Karen McDonald, if she was trying to set a new standard here, to set a new precedent in how the United States responds to school shootings. And she said, no, she was trying to treat this case as the criminal one that she felt it was. She says that the actions specifically with this shooting, the actions and the inactions of these parents individually, she felt were so egregious, that they missed so many red flags, that they bought the gun for their son, that they didn't tell school officials about it, that all of those actions were so egregious that they became criminal. They did not say, we are out here to prosecute the parents of every child who commits a crime. There are certainly people who, after this verdict, are going to argue that there might be a slippery slope, and that could be something that's chased down the road. But at least that the prosecution said that was not their intention here, that these parents, they felt, were acting in a way that was responsible for this shooting by missing all of those signs and by buying the gun, Kira.
Brian, what is your reaction as an attorney, and how do you think this is going to change cases going forward? Because unfortunately, we will more than likely have to witness another mass shooting. Look at how many we've just covered in the past year, and it's heart-wrenching. But this adds just a whole new element to how these cases could be prosecuted.
Absolutely, Kira. Whenever there are successful prosecutions of cases that are unique, or what we call cases of first impression, while the prosecutor in Pontiac County did not intend for this to be a precedent-setting case, it definitely will. If not just within the state of Michigan, then within the entire country. Because other prosecutors are looking at this and saying, okay, this is the roadmap. If a parent is, and we're now going to use her name as kind of like a title, if a parent is a Jennifer Crumbley, that parent could potentially be liable for a crime. If a parent is better than Jennifer Crumbley, then no. And if they're less than Jennifer Crumbley, then when we find out how much jail time she gets on April 9th, maybe that person will get more jail time. Whatever the argument is, at least at this point, Jennifer Crumbley will be a benchmark for other prosecutors saying whether or not they should prosecute parents in light of a school shooting. But I would say that it's not going to end just here, because there will be an appeal to this case to the Court of Appeals in Michigan, potentially even the Supreme Court of Michigan, and that's where we're really going to see this issue flushed out.
All right, we'll continue the conversation, Brian and Trevor, as we continue to follow the breaking news. Thank you so much, and thank you for streaming with us. I'm Kira Phillips. The news never stops, and neither do we. We've got a lot more after a quick break. Stay with us.
Whenever news breaks,
We are here in Israel, a nation at war after that brutal surprise attack by Hamas.
On the ground in Ukraine, reporting from Lewiston, Maine.
The scene of a horrific mass shooting.
ABC News Live is